The crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across the ballroom floor, each prism throwing gold and shadow like dice across marble that had seen 100 years of Chicago's elite. Amara stood at the edge of the crowd, her dark skin gleaming against the deep emerald of her dress, a color she'd chosen because it made her feel like she could disappear into corners if she needed to. She didn't belong here. Everyone knew it. The annual Castellano Charity Gala drew the kind of people who measured worth in bloodlines and bank accounts, and she had neither. What she had was a gift, a curse, a thing that lived in her bones and spoke through her body when music played. She had dance. Her grandmother used to say that their family carried rhythm like other people carried blood types, universal, undeniable. It was the one inheritance that poverty couldn't steal, that her father's death hadn't buried, that the foster homes couldn't beat out of her. At 26, Amara had clawed her way from Southside Chicago group homes to a scholarship at Juilliard, then to principal dancer positions that paid just enough to keep her in a studio apartment with radiators that clanged like gunshots. She performed at galas like this one for extra money, hired entertainment for people who saw her as living decoration, as exotic as the ice sculptures melting slowly beside champagne fountains. Tonight was supposed to be simple. Perform her solo, collect her check. Leave before anyone tried to touch her like she was part of the buffet. But then he walked in. Dante Moretti didn't enter rooms so much as he conquered them. 6'3" of tailored menace, dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on Renaissance paintings of fallen angels. Everyone in Chicago knew his name, even if they pretended not to. The Moretti family didn't just have connections to organized crime, they were organized crime. An empire built on fear and favors that stretched from the docks to City Hall. His father had ruled with an iron fist until a heart attack freed Dante to take the throne at 32. The rumors said he was worse than his father, colder, smarter, more ruthless. He moved through the crowd like a shark through still water, people parting without seeming to move, their survival instincts operating below conscious thought. His eyes swept the room with the assessment of a man who owned everything he looked at, or soon would. Those eyes were the color of smoke, gray and shifting, impossible to read. When they landed on Amara, she felt it like a physical touch. She didn't look away. She should have. Every instinct screamed to drop her gaze, to make herself small, to disappear into the wallpaper with the other hired help. But Amara had survived too much to bow her head for anyone, even a man who could make people disappear with a phone call. She met his stare with her chin up, her spine straight, her grandmother's voice in her head. You bow to God and gravity, baby girl, nothing else. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or interest. Then his mouth curved into a smile that didn't reach those smoke-colored eyes, and he changed direction, cutting through the crowd toward her with the inevitability of a storm front. Amara's heart kicked against her ribs, but she held her ground. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that probably cost more than her rent. Up close, he was even more devastating, all sharp cheekbones and full lips that looked obscene on a man so dangerous. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, the only flaw in otherwise perfect features. You're the dancer, he said. Not a question. His voice was dark honey over gravel, the kind of voice that could convince you to do terrible things and make you say thank you after. I'm a dancer, Amara corrected, not yours. His smile widened a fraction. Everyone here is mine in one way or another. They just don't all know it yet. Must be lonely, she said, owning people who don't want to be owned. Around them, conversation stuttered. Someone gasped. You didn't talk to Dante Moretti like that. You didn't challenge him. You certainly didn't do it with a smile on your face like Amara was doing now, her full lips curved in something between amusement and defiance. Dante tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. What's your name? Amara. Amara. He said it slowly, tasting each syllable. It means eternal, unfading. It means my mother had hope I'd be something that lasted. She paused. She died before she could find out if she was right. And were you? Something that lasted? I'm still here, aren't I? The music shifted then, the orchestra transitioning from background ambiance to something with more weight, a tango. Not the ballroom version, sanitized and safe, but something that carried heat and danger in every note. The kind of music that demanded bodies move like conversation, like argument, like war. Dante's eyes never left her face. Do you know the Argentine Tango? I know every dance that's ever mattered. Prove it. He extended his hand. Dance with me, right now. If you can make it through one complete tango without missing a step, I'll give you $50,000. The number landed like a slap. 50,000. That was a year of rent. That was her student loans. That was security, real security, the kind she'd never had in her entire life. To dance a tango? Suspicion sharpened her voice. What's the catch? Dante stepped closer, and this time she did step back, her body's wisdom overriding her pride. He noticed, and that terrible smile returned. The catch is simple. If you succeed, you get the money. And I'll ask you one question. You have to answer honestly. What question? You'll find out if you win. He kept his hand extended. Unless you're afraid you'll fail. It was the challenge in his voice that did it. That subtle implication that she might not be good enough, that she might stumble, that she might be less than perfect. Amara had built her entire life on proving people wrong, on being better than anyone expected a foster kid from the South Side to be. She'd danced through injuries that should have ended her career. She'd performed on stages while her stomach cramped with hunger. She'd turned her body into an instrument of impossible grace through sheer force of will. An Argentine tango? She could dance that in her sleep. And when I win? She asked. If you win, he corrected, you get everything I promised. She looked at his hand. Long fingers, broad palm, a silver ring on his right index finger engraved with symbols she didn't recognize. It was a devil's bargain. She knew that. Knew that nothing this good came without strings, without consequences that would strangle her later. But $50,000. She placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong, and he pulled her toward the center of the ballroom floor. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, whispers rising like steam. The orchestra, apparently used to Dante's whims, shifted seamlessly into a proper Argentine tango, the bandoneon crying out its lonesome wail, the violin answering with heat. Dante's hand found her waist, not the formal ballroom hold, but something closer, more intimate. His palm spread against the small of her back like a brand. She placed her left hand on his shoulder, felt the muscle beneath the expensive fabric, the coiled strength of a man who didn't just give orders, but could enforce them with his own hands. Last chance to run, he murmured. I don't run, she said. The music swelled and they began to move. The Argentine tango wasn't like other dances. It was improvisation and structure, a conversation where both people spoke at once, where leading and following blurred into something more complex. It required absolute trust or absolute control, and Amara wasn't sure which they had. Dante led with authority, his frame solid as steel, but he left space for her to interpret, to add her own voice to the dialogue their bodies were creating. They walked first, slow and deliberate, his legs sliding between hers in a movement that would have been obscene if it weren't so perfectly executed. She pivoted, her heel striking the marble with precision, her free leg extending in a sharp boleo that sliced the air. He caught her movement, used it, spun her into a molinete that had her circling him like a planet orbiting the sun. The crowd had gone silent. Even the whispers had stopped. There was only the music and the sharp crack of her heels against marble and the rustle of her dress as she moved. Dante pulled her closer, close enough that she could feel his heartbeat against her chest, steady and unhurried despite the complexity of what they were doing. His hand on her back pressed slightly, guiding her into a gancho, her leg hooking around his in a movement that was pure seduction, translated into geometry. "You're good," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "I told you I was." "Most people lie." "I don't." They executed a series of ciccadas, his leg displacing hers displacing his, a battle for space that looked like violence but felt like flying. Amara's thighs burned with the effort of controlling her movements, but her face showed nothing but serene focus. She'd learned long ago to hide pain behind beauty, to make suffering look like grace. Dante's eyes never left her face. "Why did you take this bet?" "Why did you make it?" "I asked first." $50,000, she said. "That's why." "Just the money?" "Money is never just money when you've never had it." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the marble facade. "No, I suppose it isn't." They were halfway through now, the music building toward its first climax. Amara felt the shift coming, felt the way the bandoneon was gathering breath for something bigger. Dante felt it too. She could tell by the way his grip tightened fractionally, the way his body tensed in preparation. The music exploded into double time, and they exploded with it. Rapid-fire ochos, her hips swiveling with machine precision. A volcata that had her leaning so far off axis that only his strength kept her from falling. A colgata where she hung from his frame like a counterweight, her body parallel to the floor, trusting him completely in that moment because she had no choice. He lifted her back to vertical, and they continued, their feet moving so fast that individual steps blurred into continuous motion. The tango had its own logic, its own language, and they were both fluent. Every lead he gave, she answered. Every embellishment she added, he supported. Sweat beaded at her hairline despite the ballroom's air conditioning. Her heart raced, but her breathing stayed controlled, her core engaged, her feet precise. She was dancing the performance of her life for an audience of one, and she could feel his attention like sunlight, focused and burning. "What happens after I win?" she asked during a brief moment of walking, their bodies close enough to whisper. "You won't." "But if I do?" Dante spun her into a series of gyros, her body rotating around his like a compass seeking north. "Then I keep my word. $50,000. And I ask my question." "Which I have to answer honestly." "That was the deal." "And if I lie?" His smile was sharp as broken glass. "I'll know." The music shifted again, slowing, the bandoneon's cry becoming mournful. This was the dangerous part of any tango, the ending, where everything had to resolve with perfect timing or the whole performance fell apart. Amara felt Dante's hand on her back, felt him gathering her closer, preparing for the final sequence. They moved into a series of slow, deliberate movements, each one weighted with intention. A parata, where he stopped her foot with his. A passata, where she stepped over his leg with the deliberation of someone crossing a threshold. Every movement was a statement, a declaration, a promise, or a threat. The music built to its final crescendo, violins and bandoneon crying out together, and Dante pulled her into one last dramatic movement. He dipped her, her back arching, her leg extending in a perfect line, her body supported entirely by his strength. They held the position as the final notes rang out, suspended in that moment between movement and stillness, between winning and losing, between strangers and something more. The music ended. Silence crashed over the ballroom like a wave. Then applause erupted, thunderous and genuine, the kind of response usually reserved for professional performances at the opera house. But Amara barely heard it. She was too focused on Dante's face, on the way he was looking at her like she'd just done something impossible. He helped her straighten, his hand lingering on her back longer than necessary. They stood in the center of the ballroom, still in dance position, while the crowd applauded and whispered and recorded everything on their phones. "Perfect execution!" someone called out. "Not a single mistake!" Dante's smile was slow and devastating. "It seems you've won, Amara." "It seems I have." He released her, stepping back to create proper distance, and suddenly she felt cold despite the warmth of the ballroom. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook, because of course he carried a checkbook, because men like him didn't use Venmo or Cash App like normal people. He wrote the check right there, his handwriting bold and angular, then tore it free and held it out to her. $50,000. Amara took it with fingers that wanted to tremble but didn't. The paper felt like possibility, like freedom, like every dream she'd deferred because survival took priority. "And now," Dante said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom, "I get to ask my question." The crowd pressed closer, everyone wanting to hear what question was worth $50,000. Dante's eyes locked onto hers, smoke gray and unreadable. "Will you marry me?" The words fell into silence like stones into still water. Amara's brain stuttered. Of all the questions she'd expected, this wasn't one of them. Around them, phones recorded, people gasped, the moment crystallizing into something that would outlive them both. "That's not a question that has a simple answer," she said carefully. "Yes or no. Those are the only answers that matter." He took her hand, the one not holding the check. "You promised to answer honestly." "I did. But honest doesn't mean simple." She looked at him, really looked at him, trying to see past the expensive suit and the dangerous reputation to whatever truth lay beneath. "Why?" "That's my question to ask, not yours." "Then ask a different one, because I can't answer that without context." Something flickered across his face. Respect, maybe, or frustration. "You're not making this easy." "Nothing worth having is easy." She pulled her hand free. "Why do you want to marry me? You don't know me. I don't know you. This is insane." The crowd murmured agreement, but Dante's expression didn't change. "My father died 6 months ago. Left me an empire and a condition. I have to be married within a year of his death, or control of the family business goes to my uncle." He paused. "A man who would destroy everything in 6 months." Understanding dawned cold and clear. "You need a wife." "I need a wife who won't expect love or fidelity or any of the things real marriages require. Someone who can play the part in public and disappear in private. His voice dropped lower. Someone who's doing this for practical reasons, not emotional ones. Amara's mind raced. This was business, a transaction. He wasn't proposing because he loved her or even knew her. He was proposing because she'd proven she could perform under pressure, could handle scrutiny, could be what he needed her to be. And what did she need? She looked at the check in her hand. $50,000 was life-changing. But it wouldn't last forever. Medical bills from old injuries were piling up. Her student loans had interest rates that guaranteed she'd die before paying them off. And her body was starting to betray her, her knees aching after performances, her back spasming in ways that scared her. A marriage to Dante Moretti would mean security, real security, the kind that came with health care and lawyers and the weight of a name that made problems disappear. It would also mean danger. Life in a world where people settled disputes with bullets instead of lawyers, where loyalty was currency and betrayal was a death sentence. What exactly would this marriage entail? She asked. 1 year. Public appearances, family dinners, convincing performances for anyone who might question the legitimacy. He held her gaze. After that, we divorce quietly. You get a settlement that makes the $50,000 look like pocket change. How much? $2 million. The number hit her like a physical blow. 2 million. That was generational wealth. That was never worrying about money again. That was freedom. And in private? She asked. In private, you live your life. Dance. Do whatever you want. I won't interfere as long as you're discreet. You mean as long as I don't embarrass you? I mean as long as you understand that perception is reality in my world, and the perception needs to be that we're genuinely married. Amara looked around the ballroom, at the faces watching them with hunger and curiosity and envy. She thought about her apartment with its clanging radiators, about the student loan bills that arrived like clockwork, about the way her body hurt after every injury is accumulating, the knowledge that dancers had expiration dates, and hers was approaching faster than she wanted to admit. She thought about security, about safety, about the chance to dance because she loved it, not because she needed the money to survive. And she thought about the way it felt to dance with someone who could actually keep up with her. I want it in writing, she said. Every detail. What you expect, what I get, how the divorce works, all of it. Something that might have been relief crossed his face. My lawyer will have a contract ready tomorrow. I want my own lawyer to review it. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. He extended his hand again. Do we have a deal? This was the moment, the point of no return. She could still walk away, take her $50,000 and disappear into the life she'd built through sheer determination. Or she could take his hand and step into something completely unknown. Her grandmother's voice whispered in her head. Sometimes the only way out is through, baby girl. She took his hand. We have a deal. The crowd erupted into chaos, applause and shouts and the flash of cameras. Dante pulled her close, and before she could react, he kissed her. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was claiming, possessive, a statement for everyone watching that she was his now. When he pulled back, his eyes held a warning. Welcome to the family, Amara. The words should have sounded welcoming. Instead, they sounded like a sentence. The rest of the night passed in a blur. People swarmed them with congratulations and questions. Someone thrust champagne into her hand. Women she'd never met kissed her cheeks and called her darling. Men clapped Dante on the back with the forced joviality of people who feared him but had to pretend otherwise. Through it all, Amara held on to two things: the check in her clutch and the memory of Dante's hand on her back during the tango. Both felt equally dangerous. Both felt like they might save her or destroy her. At midnight, Dante's driver took her home. The car was black and bulletproof, the kind of vehicle that announced its passenger was worth protecting, or worth attacking. Amara sat in the back seat, her check folded carefully in her clutch, her mind racing with everything that had just happened. She'd gone to a gala to dance a solo. She was leaving engaged to a mob boss. Her apartment building looked shabbier than usual when the car pulled up. 4 stories of peeling paint and broken security doors, the kind of place where you didn't make eye contact with your neighbors and you kept 3 locks on your door. The driver opened her door, his face professionally blank. "Mr. Moretti wanted me to tell you that someone will collect you at 10 tomorrow morning," he said. "For what?" "The lawyer. And shopping." "Shopping?" "For the ring, miss. And other necessities." Right. Because Dante Moretti's fiancé couldn't show up to meetings in off-the-rack dresses and shoes she'd resold 3 times. She was a reflection of him now, a prop in his performance. Amara climbed the 4 flights to her apartment, her feet aching in heels that had never been designed for actual walking. She unlocked her 3 locks and stepped into her tiny studio. It looked exactly as she'd left it. Rumpled bed in one corner, kitchenette with a hot plate and mini fridge, bar along one wall with a mirror she'd found at a thrift store. This was her life, small and hard-won and entirely hers. In a year, she could afford something better. She pulled out the check and stared at it. $50,000. More money than she'd ever seen. The signature at the bottom was bold and confident, just like the man who'd written it. Her phone buzzed. Text messages flooding in from other dancers who'd seen videos of the proposal already circulating on social media. The footage was everywhere. Her and Dante dancing the tango, the proposal, her acceptance. The comments ranged from romantic to suspicious to outright hostile. "Gold digger, lucky bitch, she's going to end up dead in the river." That last one made her stomach clench. Amara silenced her phone and changed out of her gown, washed her face, braided her hair, tried to process what she'd agreed to. A year as Dante Moretti's wife. A year in a world she didn't understand, playing a role she'd never auditioned for. Sleep was impossible. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, playing the night over and over. The way Dante had looked at her, the way his hand had felt on her back, the way they'd moved together like they'd been doing it for years instead of minutes. Chemistry wasn't love, she knew that. Had learned it the hard way with Marcus, the choreographer who'd promised her the world and delivered nothing but heartbreak. She wouldn't make that mistake again. Wouldn't confuse physical attraction for emotional connection. This was business, a transaction. She needed to remember that. Her phone buzzed again. She almost ignored it, but the name on the screen made her answer. "Shanice?" "Girl!" Her best friend's voice was breathless with excitement and concern in equal measure. "Tell me you did not just agree to marry Dante fucking Moretti." "I can't tell you that." "Amara, baby, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking $2 million buys a lot of security." Silence on the other end. Then, $2 million? That's the settlement after a year, plus $50,000 up front, plus living expenses and health care. And the marriage part? Is fake. A business arrangement. He needs a wife to secure his inheritance. I need financial security. It's mutually beneficial. It's insane. Maybe. But it's also the best opportunity I'm ever going to get. Amara's voice cracked slightly. I can't keep dancing forever, Shanice. My body is breaking down. This is my chance to get out before I end up like Tasha, dancing in strip clubs because it's the only thing I know how to do. Shanice sighed. I hate that you're right. But Amara, promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't let him get in your head. I promise. They talked for another hour, Shanice alternating between excitement about the money and terror about the danger. By the time they hung up, dawn was starting to break over the city. Amara didn't sleep, just lay there, watching the light change, thinking about the choice she'd made and all the ways it could go wrong. At 9:30, she showered and dressed in the best thing she owned that wasn't a performance costume, a simple black dress that had seen better days but still looked professional. She did her makeup carefully, armor for whatever this day would bring. At exactly 10, there was a knock on her door. She checked the peephole. A woman in a sharp suit with an earpiece. Security. Amara grabbed her purse and opened the door. Miss Amara? Mr. Moretti sent me to collect you. The car was waiting downstairs. Not the sedan from last night, but an SUV with bulletproof glass and reinforced doors. Dante was already inside, looking perfect in a charcoal suit, his hair still damp from a shower. Good morning, he said when she climbed in. Is it? His laugh was low and genuine. We'll see. The lawyer's office was downtown, all glass and steel and views of the lake. The contract was waiting on a conference table, easily 50 pages of dense legal text. Amara's stomach sank. I know it's overwhelming, the lawyer said, a woman named Catherine with silver hair and sharp eyes. Let me walk you through the key points. The marriage would last 1 year. During that time, Amara would live in Dante's home, attend functions as required, maintain the appearance of a genuine marriage. In return, she would receive a monthly allowance of $10,000, full health insurance, and at the end of the year, $2 million. There were confidentiality clauses, provisions for public appearances, guidelines for social media, and a clause allowing her to terminate immediately with full settlement in cases of abuse or coercion. I want to add something, Amara said. I want the right to continue dancing. This marriage can't interfere with my career. Done, Dante said immediately. Catherine made the note. Anything else? I want my own lawyer to review this before I sign. Smart, Catherine said approvingly. They spent another hour going through details. By the time they finished, Amara's head was pounding, but she understood what she was agreeing to. A year of her life in exchange for financial freedom. The wedding is in 1 week, Dante said as they left the office. City Hall, just witnesses. That's fast. We don't have time to waste, he looked at her. Unless you want something bigger. Did she? Amara had never fantasized about weddings, had never had the luxury of dreaming about white dresses when she was focused on survival. But there was something depressing about getting married in a courthouse like it was a business transaction, which it was. City Hall is fine, she said. Shopping was surreal. Dante took her to stores where they knew his name, where salespeople materialized with champagne and private fitting rooms. He bought her clothes that cost more than her monthly rent, shoes that felt like clouds, a ring that caught light like captured stars. You don't have to do all this, she said, watching him hand over a credit card without even asking the total. Yes, I do. You're going to be photographed everywhere we go. People will look for reasons to question this engagement. His eyes met hers. I won't give them ammunition. By the end of the day, Amara had a new wardrobe, a ring on her finger, and a growing sense that she'd made a deal she didn't fully understand. The week passed in a blur of preparations. Her lawyer reviewed the contract and declared it surprisingly fair. Shanice signed an NDA after Amara told her the truth. The media went wild with speculation about the sudden engagement. And then it was the wedding day. City Hall was exactly as romantic as it sounded, which was not at all. Fluorescent lights and linoleum floors, and a clerk who'd performed 1,000 ceremonies and would perform 1,000 more. Dante wore a suit. Amara wore a simple white dress she'd bought for the occasion. Nothing fancy, nothing that pretended this was more than what it was. His witnesses were family members she'd never met, men with hard eyes who looked at her like she was a problem they hadn't solved yet. Her witness was Shanice, who held her hand and whispered, "You can still run." But Amara didn't run. The clerk read the words. Dante said, "I do." Amara said, "I do." They signed papers that made it legal, and just like that, she was Amara Moretti. Dante kissed her, brief and perfunctory, nothing like the claiming kiss at the gala. His family congratulated them with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Shanice hugged her like she was saying goodbye. "Ready?" Dante asked. "For what?" "Your new life." He took her hand, the one with the ring that probably cost more than her car, and led her out of City Hall into bright afternoon sunlight. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Dante's security formed a wall around them as they walked to the waiting car. Amara looked back once, at the building where she'd just signed away a year of her life, and wondered if she'd made the best decision of her life or the worst. Only time would tell. The car pulled away from the curb and Dante's hand found hers, warm and solid and utterly foreign. "Welcome home, Mrs. Moretti." The words should have sounded welcoming. Instead, they sounded like the beginning of a story she couldn't predict the ending to.